Hey guys, it's HoppingHammy, and today's video is going to be more of an informational video as I wanted to share some of the ways you can take precautions when setting up your hamster's cage to ensure it is as safe as possible, and I will be explaining some of the things I did in Sprocket's second tank. Now, we can't always foresee every potential risk because sometimes situations come up that we simply had no way of knowing would happen, so my point in making this video is not to cause anyone anxiety or fear over all of the what-ifs that could happen, and I also don't want to share this information as a rule or a standard that must be followed, but rather to encourage us hamster owners to pre-plan and reduce as many potential risks as possible. So the first safety precaution I'll talk about when setting up your hamster's cage, which most of you probably already know this, is to place heavy items such as a large wheel or a glass sand jar on top of a wooden platform to stabilize them. So if you're using deep bedding, it's common for a hamster to burrow around wherever they feel like, and sometimes this could end up being underneath a heavy item. Some hamsters, especially the smaller dwarf hamsters, are likely to get crushed underneath if they're moving bedding around and the heavy item falls over onto them. To prevent this, you'll want to make sure any heavy items such as glass or ceramic hideouts and dishes are placed on top of a solid platform. Most people use a wood platform on stilts or dowels. You'll also want to make sure the platform is large enough for the item to fit comfortably on, with space around the sides. So in Sprocket's tank, he has this glass sand bath which has been placed onto a wooden platform to secure it so it can't fall. I forgot to take photos a few weeks back when I was setting this up, so that's why I included some example photos from other hamster owners so you can have an idea of what it looks like to use a wood platform underneath. Another item that has been placed on a solid wood platform is this area here, which has a heavy ceramic mushroom on it. And that leads me to the next point to talk about. The second safety precaution to think about is whether your ceramic item is heavy enough to not be moved or whether it should be glued or secured down in some way. I'm going to show you an example here, and that's this large ceramic mushroom. This is pretty big, but I didn't feel it was heavy enough to where Sprocket wouldn't possibly tip it over. Now, it just happened to have a hole in the underneath, which I filled up with sand, which is pretty heavy. Then I plugged the hole up and used a thick layer of silicone sealant to glue the entire base of the mushroom onto the base of this wooden box. Now if Sprocket decides to dig around in this box or even to climb up on the mushroom, I don't have to worry about the mushroom falling over onto him because it has been weighed and secured down. And the nice thing about silicone is it's very strong but can be easily sliced off with a thin razor blade if I ever wanted to remove it in future. I also wanted to show you these two smaller mushrooms over here, which I used the same silicone to attach those down to a piece of cardboard which is lining the entire underneath of this dirt section. Because this is a glass tank and not a wooden enclosure, I didn't want ceramic items to get knocked over and bang against the glass, so that's something to be mindful of if you have a similar type of setup. The third safety precaution I decided to do is to cover the tips of his dried sprays with a rolled piece of toilet paper that has been glued on. Okay, so I've never seen anyone mention this before as a potential risk, but I was thinking about if Sprocket decided to tunnel around in the Carefresh and realized he might run into the tips of these dried sprays, which honestly are very pokey and could cause some serious eye damage. So all I did was to tightly wrap the ends with some rolled toilet paper like you see here, and then I used non-toxic Elmer's glue to secure the toilet paper on, and I even tucked up the bottom piece to secure it even more. Now if Sprocket decides to dig around, there's definitely no way he will poke his eye because the ends have been wrapped in a soft protective layer. The fourth safety precaution I've taken in this setup is to cover the top edge of this Bendy Bridge fence with a solid log. The reason for doing this is that sometimes Bendy Bridges will have gaps along the edges, and I've heard a few horror stories of hamsters climbing over and getting their paw stuck in the gap, so even though this Bendy Bridge here is tightly wired together, I figured it was better to be safe than sorry, and honestly I think it looks kind of cool to see the log across the top. You can also use other items to cover it, such as moss or small rocks that can be attached with silicone or hot glue to cover up the edges. Again, I'm not trying to make this a rule or a standard to follow, it's just my own personal suggestion, but I think it's worth keeping in mind. Okay, the final thing I'll mention is if you have a hamster cage without a lid like I do, you'll obviously want to ensure there's nothing tall that your hamster can climb up on to escape. In this section here, I have some tubes to connect his two enclosures together, and I designed this tube system in a way that makes it impossible for him to climb up and get out. You wouldn't want to put a gradually sloped tube, which a hamster could easily climb up the outside to get out, or to use a straight tube up against a corner because a hamster could wedge itself between the tube and the glass and use it to crawl out as well. So another thing you can do for safety is to take a piece of wood or plexiglass to cut a hole out for a tube to go through, kind of like you see here, except this is a really rough example of it. But you can then attach this piece with silicone to the rim of your tank, and that way if by some miracle your hamster makes it up the tubes, they still won't be able to go anywhere because the acrylic sheet or wood will be blocking it. Now obviously the safest answer would be to have a solid lid, and I always recommend that to everyone, but I realize there are rare situations where someone doesn't have a lid, so just be mindful of incorporating tubes or tall objects. This list is by no means exhaustive with every safety precaution that can be taken, but it mentions many of the important ones. As we bring this video to a close, I'd like to say one more reminder that the info shared in this video is not intended to become a rule saying everyone must do this in their hamster cage, so please don't share this information with other hamster owners in that way. I mostly made this video to share the ways that I safeguarded this tank for Sprocket to use, but you have to decide what is best for your hamster and whether there might be additional ways to take precautions that I might not have mentioned here, or whether some of my precautions are unnecessary in your situation. You also might disagree with some of the points I made, and that's totally okay, but I wanted to share them anyway, and I hope it can be helpful to a few people out there. So thank you for taking the time to watch and listen, and I have some exciting videos coming up in the next few weeks that I'm looking forward to sharing. So I'll say goodbye for now, and Sprocket and I will see you in the next video. Bye!